All right, so we're going live now. Hopefully, this works. Hopefully, this checks out. We're gonna let people take a minute or so to let people come back in. We're gonna be checking this
Throw
out.
something on Twitter real quick. One of
Yeah,
you guys.
if someone can just go tweet a link. So for everyone that's tuning in right now, I guess we were having a technical difficulty. There was something that was going on with YouTube for whatever reason. The entire stream was absolutely lagging. Not exactly certain as to why. So the show was lagging. We were going, and I went back and I looked, and it was like right before Josh started even explaining everything. So before Josh was explaining everything, that's when things started going wrong. So people are starting to come in right now. People are starting to comment. Hopefully, we're not lagging anymore. Again, it wasn't an issue on our end. It was an issue on something with YouTube where for whatever reason it was lagging right before Josh started talking. So, Josh, it looks like everything's going well. Why don't you take over and explain again what you were talking about in regards to the picks, and I guess make it a tad quicker since we are kind of behind now on time, so we don't want the show going until like 7 p.m. So, pretty much explain what you did, what was going on, and how this relates to what we're doing tonight.
Yeah, so basically I went and tallied back. I tallied up all of our picks from last year to see how accurate we all were. And for today, since we're doing the top 8 picks, I counted up how we did while predicting or while doing the mock draft for the top 8 picks. And I separated them into 3 categories, which was how many of the top 8 picks you got 100% accurate. So you picked Joe Burrow to go first overall to the Bengals, and that's what happened. That's what this category is. The second one is top 8 correct. Like, for example, if you had, for whatever reason, Justin Herbert going first overall to the Bengals. Well, you were wrong, but they picked a quarterback, so we'll give you credit there. And then for the last one, like, you could pick 8 guys all going to the wrong teams, but you picked the top 8 guys that went 1 through 8 in the draft, even if they went to the wrong team. So I broke them up into 3 different categories like that. In terms of how many picks you got 100% accurate in the top 8, Brady, Lyle, and I all got 5 of the top 8 correct, and Blake got 6 of the top 8 positions correct. I think we all picked, except for Lyle. So 3 of us picked an offensive lineman to go 4th overall. We all picked the wrong offensive lineman. So we each got 7 positions correct out of the top 8. So we all missed just 1 pick in the top 8 in terms of what position teams were taking. And then out of the top 8 players correct, so just how many guys you picked accurately in the top 8, Brady, Blake, and I all picked 6. Lyle picked 7. So for the most part, like, all of our stats for like the first 8 and all of our picks were fairly similar. I know that Lyle had Jordan Love over Justin Herbert. I think Blake and what saved Lyle for it was he picked Derek Brown. Blake picked Derek Brown in the top 8. Brady and I didn't have that. So that's basically the difference between some of these stats of just like one. Somebody had 7 correct picks. Somebody else had 6. So they're all even for the most part. But the top 8 seem to be the easier ones to predict. So I'm excited to later on reveal how we did for the whole draft.
Yeah, so the purpose of this is to go back and see how overall we did looking back at the 32 picks. Again, the top 8's pretty easy because you have a good idea for the most part. But once you get to the top, 20, top 25, that's when things go completely wrong. So we're starting to pick up some more people that were in here from the first time. We're about 20 down, but that's okay. Again,
we're sorry for running too, which is
sorry for those that were tuned in and then something went wrong with YouTube, but we're back now. So again, what we're going to do in case you missed that, or in case you're tuning in right now, we're going to be doing our own NFL mock draft, the 4 of us, picks 1 through 8. Then over the next 4 weeks leading up to the draft, we're going to do 8 more picks as we go on. We're each going to go, again, this is with trades, without trades, however you want to do the NFL mock draft 1 through 8. That's exactly what we're doing. We're going to go 1 pick at a time. Again, you guys can follow along. Drop comments in the live chat as to who you think the team is going to take with whatever pick we're on. We got a graphic that shows what pick we're going to be on, so you can follow along. I'm not putting the team name because things could get confusing because there might be some trades. So this is just pick number 1. So again, if you're following along, drop a comment in the live chat. We're going to share with you, or we're going to share some picks you guys make if there's something that we don't have. So guys, we're going to kick off this NFL mock draft with pick number 1. As of right now, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars who have the number 1 overall pick. I think this one might be the quickest we're going to spend on a pick for this year. So guys, for whatever reason, if any 3 of you have a different selection than I do, speak up. But barring something drastic happen, I think we can all agree that Kellen Mond is going to be going number 1 to the Jaguars with this pick.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, without thought, like I take out my notes app on my phone, and it's like, okay, I got 2 through 8. How am I gonna juggle all this? But Kellen Mond, I mean, seal it away.
Really?
Now, I will propose this, guys, before we move on to number 2. Just, do you think that the Jags are potentially pulling a draft day where they're saying we need all the information on Bo Callahan we can get? Is there even like a 1 or 2% chance they're thinking, should we take a look at Zach Wilson? Should we take a look at Justin Fields? Or do you think this is just 100% don't even think twice? Who are we taking with our second first round pick?
I'm sure they've done their homework on everybody. I mean, that's what any good GM in front office would do. But like I said last week, I think this is the easiest pick in the history of the NFL draft. Trevor Lawrence at number 1. It's going to happen. Seal it away. Come out last Thursday in April, it's going to be Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, and I think it also, they clearly need a quarterback, and there's been so much talk, and you can look at whatever mock drafts you want. And last week I mentioned that I had 2 or 3 mock drafts open on my computer, and they were all different except for the first overall pick that was Trevor Lawrence. Later in the show, we're going to talk about our top 5 quarterbacks going into the draft, top 5 running backs. And I think it's pretty clear that there's a number 1, and then there's 2 through 5. And I think that the 2 through 5 are almost interchangeable because that's how so many different experts have them. But there's one that's at the top in all of them, and it's Trevor Lawrence.
Yep. So now things get interesting, guys, because, they would have been interesting a week ago, but I think for now we have a fairly solid idea what's going to happen in number 2. But we talked about it last week with the whole Jets thing with Sam Darnold. Well, they traded Sam Darnold. The Panthers essentially draft, because Sam Darnold's only 23, so the Panthers get themselves a quarterback. I guess it takes them out of potential running in the first round, essentially the Deshaun Watson rumors as well. So, all right, guys, number 2, currently the New York Jets have the number 2 pick. We all assume they're going to have the number 2 pick, but again, this is your mock draft. You guys can do anything you want. Do you guys have the Jets picking at number 2? And if you do, who do you have going there? And anyone can just take over and go first if they'd like.
Okay, I want to jump in real quick, and I'll say that I'm going to do what I did last year, so I'm just going to leave the draft order as it is. But what I am going to do is I'll tell you if I think a pick is going to get traded. But my whole draft is going to be picking where the teams are at right now. And like I said, I've got the stats from last year. That screwed me over a little bit. But then also there were a couple times where you guys had predicted a trade to happen that either didn't happen. Then did you guys look like geniuses? So just to keep it simple, I'm just not going to do trades, but I'll tell you when I think they're going to happen. This is one that I do not think is going to happen. And I think, at least in my opinion, it's pretty clear that they're going to take a quarterback at this point, given that they just they just sent Sam Darnold to Carolina, which is, I think, good for both parties here. Like I said, there's a group of quarterbacks after Trevor Lawrence that are kind of up in the air. I think the Justin Fields off-field issues are a bad narrative. I don't buy into it. I think for me, he's the number 2 quarterback in this draft. I think if you look at his 2 years at Ohio State, he was more consistent than Zach Wilson has been at BYU in his 3 years. There's a lot to like about Zach Wilson, but for me personally, Justin Fields is my number 2 quarterback in this draft. And I think that if the Jets take him at 2, which I think they will, I think he can step in and be an NFL quarterback very, very quickly. And I think that he'll probably have a little bit more success than Sam Darnold did in his first season.
Yeah, this is where it gets interesting. I mean, Blake said it last week, the draft really starts at 2. And like I said last week, when we were debating this whole Sam Darnold versus the Jets draft pick and which way do they go, I'll repeat what I said now that this trade went down. And it's that the Niners tried to trade as high up as they could to get the next best quarterback not named Trevor Lawrence. And because they traded up to 3 and not to number 2, that tells me that the Jets did not want to trade down. They know exactly who they want, and it's probably going to be a quarterback. I believe it's going to be Zach Wilson. And at the start of the year, we never would have said that. I mean, his name in the first round would have been crazy. But, I mean, reading all these stories, The Ringer did a great piece on how after his sophomore year, his family paid for YouTube TV, and he downloaded every Joe Burrow game from his junior year because he wanted to ascend the way Joe Burrow did from basically a late-round pick to a number 1 pick. And he's basically done that. Clearly, all that film studying he did worked out because – you look at what he did this past year. He lit the world on fire. His off-script throws are insane. He's got a great arm. And he fits that mold of what a modern quarterback is. He's got the arm talent and he's got the mobility. And I think because of that, the Jets are going to take him at 2. And from every report and indication that we've seen so far, it seems like there's going to be a good chance that the Jets are going to take Zach Wilson.
I also am going to do what Josh did, and I did this last year, is I didn't make any trades. I will tell you if I'm going to make a trade, but I'm keeping the draft order as it is at the time of this video. At 2, I also have Zach Wilson. I think he is, I don't want to say a replica of Sam Darnold, because if so, they wouldn't have gotten rid of Sam Darnold. But he's a very similar player, and I think it's going to be pretty easy for him to adapt to the Jets system. I think with he's one of the few players in this draft that's able to, like we saw, like Lyle said, his off-script throws are great, which means when your offensive line isn't great, you got to adapt. You have to be able to work outside of the pocket. And I think he showed us this last year that he's capable of doing that, and he's very good at doing that. So I think 2 is going to be Zach Wilson, and I think he's going to be a good fit for the Jets. They just need to figure out what the hell's going on in their front office first.
Yeah, I mean, I do. This Justin Fields, Zach Wilson whole thing over the last few months has been interesting to follow, and how that's gone down from just all the reports that are coming out. And I think Adam Schefter even said today, he tweeted or he texted Zach Wilson saying, "Welcome to New York." So it's not official, but by the looks of it, it looks like it's going to be Zach Wilson. So I am going to go with Zach Wilson at number 2. I think that's pretty much who they got locked in. And I think the draft, honestly, really starts at 3, which is where we go to now. The 49ers, they traded to get the number 3 pick. They traded, I think, as Lyle said, to get the best quarterback that's not Trevor Lawrence, essentially. But I think you had to assume they have a good idea that the Jets are going to be going Zach Wilson at 2. So whoever the Niners are picking at 3, they traded up and they paid a hefty price to get them. So the question is, guys, who do you think the 49ers essentially gave the farm to take with this number 3 overall pick?
Well, if I've got Fields at 2, that means I've got Wilson at 3, and I think it likely means you guys all have Fields at 3 too. So look, I think this one's pretty interchangeable when it comes to Zach Wilson and Justin Fields. Whoever goes first, the others going, or whoever goes second, the others going third. That's the way that I look at it, and I think they have a lot of similar attributes. But one thing that I think Wilson is so good at is I think he's the best passer out of the pocket in this draft. I think he's better than Trevor Lawrence. I think he's right. I think he and Fields are similar. I think he's better than Trey Lance. But I think is phenomenal is his arm strength and his accuracy out of the pocket. It's not like he can just complete a 10-yard pass. I mean, go back and look at his tape from this year and see how many 35, 40-yard passes this dude makes while out of the pocket. It's unbelievable how good he is. I mean, they called him the Mormon Mahomes for a reason. I mean, he's got this sidearm sling that he can throw out of the pocket and throw darts, and it's remarkable. So for me, I've got him at 3. He's the best quarterback available on my draft board at 3. Like I said, I've got Fields at 2, so that's where I'm at with Wilson at 3 going to San Francisco. And again, like we said this last week, like don't sit there and tell me that Jimmy Garoppolo is your quarterback when you pulled off that trade to get the number 3 pick from Miami via Houston. Like, you're taking a quarterback. Don't sit there and lie to my face, man. Don't do that.
I'll repeat it this week. I really, really hate the NFC West. I got to tell you. To your point, Josh, I think I saw for Zach Wilson, he completed over 70% of his passes on throws 30 or more yards downfield, which is insane. That was the highest in the FBS last year. So I've got number 3. So far I have Lawrence at 1, Wilson at 2. Okay, this mock draft is what I think is going to happen. How I'm structuring this, it's different than what I would do. What I would do will be reflected when we do our top 5 for each position.
Right.
And every report I'm seeing, especially today, Schefter tweeted it out saying the Niners most likely made this trade to go get Mac Jones. And I'm going to take his word for it. Like, would I do that personally? No, but if that's the report that's coming out, and it's Schefter tweeting it, I'll believe him. Because, look, Kyle Shanahan and his schemes in the past, it's been this type of quarterback, Kirk Cousins, Matt Ryan, Jimmy Garoppolo. I would personally rather have a mobile quarterback, but if these are the reports, I'm going to take their word for it. I'm going to say Mac Jones goes at 3 to San Francisco.
As Blake scoffs, like it's such an astronomical thought to draft a quarterback that is almost a carbon copy of what Justin Herbert was and put up better numbers than Justin Herbert did in college, and won a national championship, I also have Mac Jones going number 3 to San Francisco.
Wow.
I do. I think he's a great fit. I think they saw the risk that the Chargers took. I say a risk, like Justin Herbert was, a big risk. But I think Mac Jones is comparable to what we saw Justin Herbert perform like this last year. And I think it's going to be a very similar scenario. He might get the starting job week 1 if Garoppolo's not there. If Garoppolo is still there, I think he might accidentally get a Toradol shot into his lung, and we'll see what happens there. But I think Mac Jones is the guy at number 3 to San Francisco. I think he fits their system very well. Like what Lyle said, is he the best player at this position or available? No, I think Justin Fields should be better. However, I just don't know how well Shanahan can do with not a run-first mentality quarterback, but a guy with a run very closely second mentality in Fields.
Yeah, the reason I was reacting the way I did was because I also have Mac Jones at 3, and it's just the fact that, again, this is even potentially likely going to happen, that Mac Jones is going to go. He's not a bad quarterback. Mac Jones is not a bad quarterback. A lot of other years, he'd be a top 2 or 3 quarterback. Again, when we do our quarterback rankings in a bit, there might be some guys that are ranked above him, but as the guys have mentioned before me, it fits the system overall better for San Francisco, and it actually makes more sense thinking about this now. Like, why would you trade up to get Mac Jones at number 3? Well, obviously, where San Francisco was sitting, where were they at number 12 initially? I mean, with how many trades ended up happening, was that where they were sitting initially at 12? I want to say 12. Let's say they were. At 12.
Yeah, they were.
They knew that they weren't going to get Mac Jones at 12. They knew. And I guess they just pretty much, in regards to talking with everyone, they have their eyes set on someone. It's likely Mac Jones based on reports. It might not be. We all think it's Mac Jones. And they knew that they'd have to trade up out of 12 in order to get Mac Jones. And what it's looking like, that number 3 pick was the price they had to pay to pretty much guarantee, because there's no way Mac Jones goes at number 2. So they know it's going to be a gamble based on, what was going to happen at 3 if someone was going to trade up to get him or Fields. And that's the price they had to pay. So obviously San Francisco, they love Mac Jones. I think he's better than Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, I think Mac Jones gives him a better chance to win than Jimmy Garoppolo does. So, again, you can make the case Justin Fields is a better quarterback, which I do think he is. But in regards to how it fits the system, again, these guys hit it perfectly. I think that just fits the 49ers better. And I do think it's going to be Mac Jones, which is, again, seems crazy to think about. This was a guy that sat behind Tua, that sat behind Jalen Hurts, that was a third-string quarterback, that now is going to be drafted potentially. What was it? Tua went 5 last year, right? So he has a chance to go potentially higher than Tua did, obviously higher than Jalen Hurts did. So again, anything can happen, but just based on reports and how everything's going, I do think it's going to be Mac Jones here in the 3rd spot, which, guys, takes us now to pick number 4, which things can get very interesting, because today there were reports that the Falcons are now taking calls in regards to this pick. They are open to moving back later in the draft, because this is where things get really juicy, because a lot of people think there's a chance we can have 4, maybe 5 quarterbacks go within the first 4 or 5 picks. The Falcons, if they want, they could take a quarterback here, which, again, I know some of you guys said you're not going to be doing any trading. Me personally, this is where I have my first trade. So I guess, guys, do you think the Falcons, and I guess Josh will probably explain it as well, because this seems like one of those ones where it seems smart for the Falcons to trade back unless they want to draft a quarterback. But like I said, some guys are going to stay put. They're not going to make any trades. So Josh, will throw it to you. What do you got happening here when things can get really juicy trade-wise for the NFL draft?
Yeah, so I think you're right. And to that point, like, I think that this is where the first trade happens. But again, like I said, I'm not going to make any trades. So the way that I look at this is there's a couple different ways they can go. Number one, you've got Matt Ryan, who's 35. And, he's still throwing for 4,000 yards a season. But again, like, I think that that team got the short end of the stick a lot last season. The offense was, they had a lot of talent. And so they had guys who are talented put up stats. I don't think this was a talented football team last year, but I do think they got the short end of the stick a number of times last year. Like, how many games should they have won at the end and lost tragically? So I think that they were right there. They could have won more games. They didn't, whatever. So there's a couple of different ways I think they can go with this. Number one, what I think they could do, and I think is likely, I think they trade. The other things they can do are they could go for a defensive back, which is one of their draft needs, which who are you going to take it for? Like, there's no point. Like I said, Matt Ryan's 35. Do you want to take his, successor at 4? Do you want to trade back and see who else you can get? I think 4 is too high to take Trey Lance. You could take Justin Fields here, but what's the point of drafting Justin Fields if he's going to sit behind Matt Ryan for a couple more years? Because he's still obviously a very capable quarterback. Or do you take the best player available? And for me, given the fact that I have Lawrence, Fields, and Wilson off my board, the best player available, in my opinion, by far, is Kyle Pitts. We've raved about him time and time again. Our Twitter page became a Kyle Pitts fan page for a couple weeks during the college football season. And look, like, I like Hayden Hurst. Like, he was on my I drafted him last year in fantasy late because I thought that he was going to have a good season, and he did. And I spun him in a decent trade and got a good return. I like Hayden Hurst. But your tight ends on this team are Hayden Hurst, Jaden Graham, and Lee Smith. Like, Pitts is the most versatile tight end prospect we've seen in a long time, where he's basically just a massive receiver. He's got great speed. He's got great hands. The dude's phenomenal. He's the best player available for me right here. And if you add him in because he's so versatile, because he's so good, I think that makes the offense even more dynamic. For a team that seemed to be a pretty pass-heavy team last year with Calvin Ridley and Russell Gage and Julio Jones and all these guys, and you add Kyle Pitts into that mix, suddenly, if Matt Ryan doesn't slow down next year and they take Kyle Pitts with this pick, they are arguably one of the better passing attacks on paper in the NFL next year. So I've got Kyle Pitts at 4.
Man, so you'd have Calvin Ridley, 1,300 yards last year, Julio, who should be healthy, and then Kyle Pitts. That's an offense. I'll tell you what. Right. So this is where my first trade happens. I think Josh and Brady are doing no trades. I'm doing some trades.
Yes.
I've seen here that the Falcons have thought about. I've seen in a lot of mocks that the Falcons have thought about maybe Trey Lance here because he's a guy that's raw but a lot of talent. He could sit behind Matt Ryan for a little while. But we saw today the Falcons are listening to trades. I think this trade spot at 4 makes a lot of sense. And because of that, I have the Falcons trading out, the Broncos jumping up to 4, and they select Justin Fields. Look, the Broncos know they need a quarterback. We've seen over a season of Drew Lock. Sometimes a season is all you get as a starting quarterback in the NFL. Sometimes it's less. And for Drew Lock, he hasn't really lived up to expectations. So the Falcons are 100% looking quarterback. And when you're quarterback shopping at 9, it can be hard to find your guy in this draft, especially like we've talked about how many quarterbacks are going to go early. So I think they jump up, Falcons trade back, Broncos get Fields and put him in an offense that has a bunch of talent. You've got Jerry Jeudy in that offense. Like, you have weapons. It's just a matter of you need the quarterback. So I think Fields goes 4 here and right about where he should.
Lyle, funny enough, you say the Broncos. I'm not doing trades in mine, but if I did, I do see the Broncos jumping up to 4. They have enough assets too. I mean, they've got some decent offensive weapons. They have, I think, a good stash of picks, but their defense has always been pretty solid. But I'm going to hold with Atlanta here. And I think one of the big things we're seeing right now in the NFL, and this is outside of football, is a change of culture, right? And this is a big thing, especially we're seeing it in Atlanta. There's so many things going on. And I think personnel-wise, Justin Fields is the perfect person to come take over, sit for a year behind Matt Ryan at number 4. And I think that's what they do. I think Justin Fields is a guy who, yeah, you have Pitts, who's going to be a great weapon, Josh, but Matt Ryan isn't able to extend plays. And we've seen quarterbacks who are able to extend plays, who are able to get out of the pocket, move downfield, and utilize those other weapons they have. So I think Fields is a better fit for Atlanta than Pitts is, purely for his ability to extend plays. Yeah, Matt Ryan's, like you said, throwing for 4,000 yards every year, but he's only going to do that for 1 to 2 more years. So I think Fields is a guy that they can go groom, what better quarterback? I can't think of many better quarterbacks to think of in the NFL to just train a young quarterback than Matt Ryan, who has quite literally been through everything in the NFL. So I got Justin Fields going forward to Atlanta.
Yeah, so I do have Justin Fields going to number 4, but as I said, I have a trade with this pick. And I had to consult one of our friends who is a fan of this team that made this trade because I wanted to know what he thought it would cost or what he thought the cost would be. Would it be worth it? I wanted to make sure I wasn't too out of my mind. Then I went to the Action Network, which is a great, service. It's like $30 a year for a subscription. And you have like mock draft simulators. You can check out value of trades. So I did that. I put in this trade to see what it would cost in order for this move to happen. So guys, picking Justin Fields at number 4, I have the Washington football team coming all the way up from 19, moving up to 4. They just signed Ryan Fitzmagic for the season. He's not going to be their long-term answer. He's a perfect bridge quarterback. Have him start the first 8-10 games you saw with Tua last year. This Washington team, they have a fantastic defense. They had some good offensive weapons this offseason. They just need a quarterback. I know our buddy Sean said they need a few other pieces, but I think if Justin Fields is still there at 4, this is a guy that you trade up to get. Now, this is exactly what the package was that said it'd be fair. So I have the Falcons. They move back at pick number 19. They get a 2021 third-round pick. They'll then get a 2022 first-round pick, and they'll get a 2022 third-round pick as well. The Washington football team, they get pick number 4, and they get a 2021 fifth-round pick. So again, going back, the trade that it was approved was Falcons get pick number 19, a 2021 third, a 2022 first, a 2022 third, and the Washington football team gets number 4 pick and then a 5th round thrown in. Guys, again, if Justin Fields is sitting there, the Washington football team, they desperately need a quarterback. And this is a guy I think you trade up, you give up a first round, give up a couple third rounds. Again, if you want to throw in a second rounder, by all means, add that to it. This is just what the value said was fair. But I think it's a no-brainer if you're them. Maybe Trey Lance they'll trade up to get if Trey Lance is sitting there like at 6, 7, 8 or so. But again, I think it's too tough to pass up when you can get a guy like that at number 4. I think he's worth trading 2 first for. Like I said, a couple thirds, maybe a second. Depends on how. Because I mean, the Falcons for the most part, it really also depends. Because I just don't know who they could take it for. I know Josh said you got to go with Kyle Pitts if you're not going quarterback. It does make sense to go quarterback, but it also doesn't make sense. But overall, I just don't see at the number 4 spot anyone really like that they necessarily desperately need. I think if you're the Falcons, it'd be smart to trade back. This is a team where if they're healthy, if things are clicking, I think they're a potential playoff team. So it's not like they're bottom of the barrel where they're just a crap team that has no chance of making the playoffs. If they're healthy, if they make some good additions, they can make the playoffs this year. So if you're them, I think trade back, again, get a couple firsts, a few seconds, a few thirds or something like that. And again, I think Justin Fields to the Washington football team, and especially considering, again, he doesn't have to start right away. You don't have to start him until halfway to the season. Or if Ryan Fitzmagic leads him to the playoffs, he retires at the end of the year with the Super Bowl ring, then you bring in Justin Fields next season. So I got Justin Fields going to the Washington football team with the number 4 overall pick.
Let me say this. I think that's a fair trade, by the way. I think that's about what you'd see, especially if the team's going to jump all the way up from 19. You would probably have to give up more capital. I will say this, and I think it's a good move if they decide to do it. But when you trade up, when you're one of these NFL teams that trades up like that for a quarterback, you have to nail it. Because if you don't nail it, it sets you back like 4 or 5 years. We saw it with the Bears with Trubisky. Like, you give up that much capital to go get a quarterback. If you miss, you're in trouble for the next 4 to 5 years. It will set you back. So you've got to know.
You don't want to be the team that SportsCenter is posting about later. It's like they traded up and drafted X before A, B, C, D, and E.
I will add this where, like you said, I mean, it is a hefty package. I think Justin Fields is the only quarterback worth doing it. I don't think you trade up and risk it for Mac Jones. I don't think you do it for Trey Lance. Oh, I know. I'm just adding why I did it for Justin Fields and not some of the other ones.
Yeah.
Don't be the Rams where you trade everything to go up and get Jared Goff, and then a few years later trade everything to then get rid of Jared Goff.
Right. All right, guys. So those are we're halfway through. On to pick number 5.
I'm going to be honest with the Bengals at 5. I think this is for me after Lawrence at 1. This is the easiest one for me, and I think it's Penei Sewell. There was a time when we all really thought maybe going into last season that Penei Sewell, at least for me, depending on what the Jets did last year, depending on what the Jaguars did last year, I legitimately thought there was a chance that Penei Sewell could somehow hop over Trevor Lawrence and be the number 1 pick, depending on who got that number 1 overall pick. Now we see that it's the Jaguars. The Jets are at 2. They screwed themselves out of the number 1 pick at the end of the season, and thanks for beating the Rams. That was great. I appreciate it. But like also, we saw how many good quarterbacks there were last year. And I think that is the only reason why Penei Sewell fell. It's not the fact that he decided to sit out. It's how good these quarterbacks were. I've got Penei Sewell here. I mean, you had Joe Burrow last year. He got hurt. He needs more protection, so give him more protection with one of the best offensive line prospects we've seen, if not ever, then at least in the last 20 years, since Orlando Pace. Take Penei Sewell. It's the easiest pick of the draft for me behind number 1 overall, and it's Sewell from Oregon.
I have another trade. At number 5, the Detroit Lions trade up while the Bengals move down to 7. And the Detroit Lions select quarterback Trey Lance from North Dakota State.
Interesting.
Look, do I think Trey Lance is the 5th best player in this draft over some of these other offensive skill players? I don't. And I think the Lions would love to see Trey Lance slide to 7 so they can get their quarterback of the future. I don't think they actually believe that's Jared Goff. But at the same time, I don't think the Lions are the only team that are going to be interested in Trey Lance. And I think there's going to be other teams ringing the phone lines at that 5th pick with the Bengals saying, hey, what can we give you? Because, look, the Patriots need a quarterback. I talked about the Broncos if they didn't trade up to 4. You can even talk about the Eagles. Blake mentioned the Washington football team. There are teams interested in quarterbacks. So if the Lions are serious about this, you might have to make the trade. And if you're the Bengals, you only have to drop 2 spots back to probably get the guy that you'd likely want at 5 anyway. So I'm going to flip-flop these picks here. Lions trade up to 5. They get Trey Lance. You have a guy. So Lance is interesting, right? Because, I mean, he's so unknown despite having such a great sophomore season. I mean, he didn't throw a single pick. He had 28 passing touchdowns. He had 10 plus on the ground. But he hasn't played in almost a whole year, and I don't really count that exhibition game for anything. So he's very unknown, but he's very raw, and he has a chance to be really good. I think some time on the bench would do him some good, and it gets the Lions their quarterback of the future. So Bengals move down to 7, Lions are up to 5, and yes, 5 quarterbacks go in the top 5.
All right. Josh, I do agree with what you said. Is this, to me, is the second easiest pick in the draft, with Penei Sewell going to 5 to Cincinnati. And one of the thing for me is how I think of this, and I said this on shows prior, is I sort of compare Penei Sewell this year to Chase Young last year. He is the best player in the draft, I'd say bar none. But another player will be taken before him. And that's what happened last year, and that's going to happen with 4 guys this year. But Penei Sewell will still be, I mean, I can't speak to Trevor Lawrence. I think Penei Sewell will have the longest career of anybody, or the most fruitful career of anybody in this draft class. Just from the fact that, like you said, top 3, 2, 1 offensive line prospect we've seen in the last 20 years. He's just been touted as the guy at Oregon for the last few years. And he's not even going to play this last year, and he's going to go top 5. I see no reason why Penei Sewell doesn't go number 5, unless it is traded from Cincinnati. I think Penei Sewell to Cincy is the perfect fit.
Yeah, I like that Lyle did bring up this whole trade situation, because we do have the Dolphins picking at number 6, and we know the Dolphins are taking a quarterback there. So the Dolphins, assuming no teams try to climb up there, that's why teams might want to get into the 5th pick, because teams might be trying to get into that 6th one. So teams are thinking, oh, this team thinks they're slide trading to number 6. Let's trade to number 5 and get the quarterback we want, because everyone just assumes, again, like these guys mentioned, Penei Sewell to the Bengals is like the easiest pick, where if the Bengals had like the number 1 overall pick or number 2, they'd be taking Penei Sewell anyway. He's been going there this entire time, and now they're just going further and further down the list, where, again, they could trade to 6 or 7 and still get him there. So I didn't do a trade here because I have one coming up. I do have the Bengals taking Penei Sewell, but Lyle hit it perfectly, where this is a prime situation where, again, is Trey Lance or Justin Fields, Mac Jones, however it falls, the 5th best overall prospect in this class? No, it's just so many teams need a quarterback, and so many of these teams that are drafting here don't need a quarterback that have that certain spot, which is why, again, I think teams might try to trade that don't think they have a chance at 9, 10, 11, 12, or again, potentially in the later teens. So I do have the Bengals taking Penei Sewell, but I do like Lyle's trade suggestion in regards to some team trying to come up, and especially the Lions. The Lions are going too because they're in a perfect situation. They have Goff for this upcoming year. They don't need him to start. They're going to be rebuilding. They're going to be sucking. So if you like Trey Lance, if you want to go up and get him, by all means, go up and get him. All right, guys, moving on to pick number 6 now. Who do we got at number 6? Well, currently it's the Dolphins right now, but knowing what they've been up to the last few weeks, I'm not going to be shocked if it's not the Dolphins come draft night.
Yeah, I think that this is another one that's fairly easy, at least in terms of a position, given what they need or what a want would be. If Kyle Pitts is there, I say take him. For me, he's not. So that leaves for me Jamar Chase. All of the reports that have come out have said he sat out this season. We still all thought that he was going to be good, and then he exceeded expectations at his pro day. So he's the clear number 1 wide receiver in this draft for me. Tua had some games where he looked really good last year. There were some games where the Dolphins looked like they could be a legitimate contender, at least in that division this year, next year. They're starting to put those pieces together. They're coming out of the rebuild, and I think the next piece is a really good wide receiver. So Jamar Chase, he continues to exceed expectations, whether it's on the field, whether it's sitting out and then working out, whether it's in his pro day. He continues to just get better. So I've got Jamar Chase going at 6 to Miami.
Yeah, I'm going to double up with you. This is my first pass catcher off the board, and I love Kyle Pitts, but I think Jamar Chase at 6 to the Dolphins just makes so much sense. I believe he's the best pass catcher in this draft. I mean, the comps for him are just, out of this world. People give him some insane comps. I've heard bigger, stronger Antonio Brown. I've heard Amari Cooper. I've heard, some of the top receivers in the league for this guy. And it's because of everything he's put together, both at LSU and the season when he was out. I mean, you talk about winning the Biletnikoff on a national championship team. Let's remember, I talked about this on a show. Justin Jefferson had 1,400 yards and almost won Offensive Rookie of the Year as a rookie. And he was the second best receiver on this national championship team. I think Jamar Chase is special. And I'm talking like top 3 to 5 receiver in the league when he's in his prime. And for a guy like Tua that needs weapons, it just makes way too much sense. So I have Jamar Chase here, and I think it's a perfect fit. I think he's going to absolutely thrive in Miami.
What you guys said, I also think Jamar Chase is the perfect fit in Miami. It'd be kind of cool to see. I'm really interested to see how Tua and Jamar connect and how they would link up. Obviously, Tua played well without a great arsenal of weapons. And when you get the guy, like Lyle said, who is the taller, bigger, better, faster, stronger, XYZ, whoever it may be, I'm really excited to see what this Miami team can do. They were on the cusp of a playoff berth this last year, and I think this is what they need to get them over the hump, is that one guy that, like you said, a Justin Jefferson go-to receiver. Yes, they have Adam Thielen up in Minnesota as well, but the guy who could just be your go-to, and that is what Miami lacked. I think it's another no question that this is a Jamar Chase to Miami.
Another perfect thing where they would have gotten Jamar Chase at number 3 anyway, and now they have a chance to get him at a 6. Before I get to my pick, guys, we do have a super chat from our man Connor saying, what's the over-under on 3 trades in the top 10 and 7.5 for the first round? I'm going to take the over on the 3 trades in the top 10 because I think there's going to be a lot that goes down. And 7.5 in the first round, I'm going to take the under. That just seems like a lot. I'd have to look back and see like what the yearly average is, but I don't know. 8 trades in the first round seems. I mean, even if we include the ones that like the Dolphins made, the Eagles made, that even then puts it at 2, which means we need 6 more. So I don't think we'll get to 8, but I definitely think at least in the top 10.
Under, easily under.
Yeah, under on the 7.5, and I'll say over on the 3 trades.
Knowing Perfect. Blake, he'll get both of those bets wrong.
Probably for the most part. It's not college basketball related, so I actually probably won't. Sure. Guys, I have another trade here, but don't worry. I still have the Dolphins likely getting Jamar Chase, but I have, let me go back and see what I had in my notes. I do have the Broncos trading up to the number 6 pick and I have them taking Trey Lance. They're sitting there at 9. I don't think that he's going to fall there to 9 at them. So I think that the Broncos, they trade up with the Dolphins. The Dolphins move back again, as I'm getting like a phone call from Andover, Maryland. Not exactly certain who's in Andover, Maryland. But overall, I think the Broncos, I think they trade up to number 6. I think they get Trey Lance. Here's the deal I did. I have Denver receiving the number 6 overall pick, and they receive a 5th rounder in 2021 from the Dolphins. The Dolphins, they move back 3 spots to number 9, and they get a 2021 3rd round pick. So there's still a chance they can get Jamar. They're going to get some solid pass catcher there at 9. Jamar Chase might follow them at 9. So essentially they move back a few picks to get a 3rd rounder. And I have the Broncos taking Trey Lance, giving me 5 quarterbacks in my top 6 picks. I think we all have a good amount of quarterbacks. So another trade there. Don't worry, guys. That's my final trade of the night for our first 8 picks. I wanted to do more because making trades is fun, but no more trades for me. Moving on now to pick number 7. We got 2 more picks to go for part 1 of our mock draft series.
All right, so I got to be honest. I'm going to go back to Lyle's trade with the Lions moving up and taking a quarterback, and I say I don't think that happens. I just don't see a world where the Lions make that trade to send Stafford to LA, get Goff in return, and yeah, they'll get some. They got a lot in return as well because the Rams were paying them to take the Goff contract away from them, which was just desperation. And the Lions took it, and I think it's a good trade for them too. But look, I think Goff is an NFL quarterback. He did not fit in LA. In fact, I thought he was horrible in LA. But I think he's still an NFL quarterback. He just does not fit with Sean McVay. He might fit in Detroit. I just see no world where the Lions agree to this contract with him to do this trade and then to not have him as their starting quarterback. So, and something that I think bolsters it just boosts my opinion of this more is the fact that there's no Marvin Jones, there's no Kenny Golladay. They're losing all of those weapons around Goff. So if you're going to do this trade and not expect to have Goff as your quarterback, you'd at least have those weapons there. What?
There was just like some loud screech of some sort of audio.
Oh, I didn't hear it.
Whatever.
But yeah, I mean, there's no talent around. There's no offensive talent around him at the moment anyway. So why not go out and get some? I think that Jared Goff needs some sort of talent, in which case I think they go out and take Jalen Waddle, who's my number 2 wide receiver in this draft. So I have back-to-back wide receivers going with Chase to Miami at 6. I've got Waddle going to Detroit at 7. And look, that's my next thing on here is wide receiver or quarterback. And I just don't think they take a quarterback given the move that they just did with Goff and the fact that they now no longer have Marvin Jones. They no longer have Kenny Golladay. They need somebody to catch passes from Jared Goff if they do expect to have him as their quarterback, which I think they do. So I think they take Jalen Waddle.
Okay, so this is where I have the Bengals because they traded back to 7. The Lions went up to 5. And here the Bengals sit with the guy they should probably be taking anyway if they stay at 5. So Penei Sewell's still on the board. That's why I thought that trade had a chance to make sense for both the Lions and the Bengals. Look, I've seen reports about, if Jamar Chase is on the board, do you reunite Joe Burrow with Jamar Chase, or do you take Kyle Pitts and just load up your receiving core on offense? Because if you have great receivers with an average O-line, you can make it work, and that's what turns you into an elite team. No way. I mean, look, guys, Joe Burrow as a rookie quarterback lasted 10 games and then tore his ACL. His O-line was so bad. He got sacked 32 times. He was pressured more than 200 times in 10 games. You cannot take a franchise quarterback at number 1 if you're not going to give him any protection. And you guys said it. I mean, if you want to pick one guy from this draft class that probably has the best chance to go to the Hall of Fame, it's Penei Sewell. This is the best offensive tackle in years. It's such an easy pick. Get him to Cincinnati, get him on Joe Burrow's blind side, and start to build that offensive line and keep Burrow healthy for a guy you use the number 1 pick on.
Yeah, I like it. At 7, I have a pass catcher. And I'm going to go with Kyle Pitts. I think, yes, Detroit did lose a good amount of receivers in this past offseason. So now you have a pairing.
They lost all of them.
They lost all of them.
All of them.
But think about this. Now you have a pairing of Hawkinson and Kyle Pitts as your tight ends. 2 different style tight ends.
That's so scary.
Wait, who else do they have as their tight end? They have Sternberger?
No, he's a Packer, I think.
Yeah.
He is a Packer. Blake, Google who the other Lions tight end is for me. But the Lions also pick at 41. They have one of the earlier picks in the second round. And if you look at this receiver class, this is a deep, deep, deep receiver class.
Mm-hmm.
Like at 41, there's still going to be an Elijah Moore, a Rashad Bateman, a Kadarius Toney to reunite the Florida guys. There's still going to be those top-tier receivers in the second round. So I think Kyle Pitts to Detroit is a great pairing, and Detroit's going to spend their first 2 picks on offensive weapons.
Yeah, I mean, again, you can make the case they could get a quarterback to groom or golf, but they need a wide receiver or some sort
Is
of pass
golf a
catcher.
guy to groom a quarterback, though?
Well,
that's
we'll
the thing. I
find
don't
out.
know.
We'll
I don't think
find out.
so.
So they lost Kenny Galladay. They lost Marvin Jones. Brady, to answer your question, I looked it up on their depth chart for the Lions. It's so bad, I already forgot who they were because after Hawkinson, it's a bunch of just absolute nobodies. I think one of them was Josh Hill. I want to say if it's coming back to me correctly. So I do like the Kyle Pitts one, but I do have them going with Jamar Chase. They're getting the number 1 wide receiver off the board. He's a good one to put right there. So I got the Lions going with Jamar Chase. But again, I think for the most part, unless there's absolute chaos, I think wherever the Lions are picking, you got to see him going wide receiver. I mean, Jared Goff has to throw the ball to someone. I mean, I don't even know. I mean, let me Google this right now because I don't even know what the Lions have on their depth chart. What, like Quintez Cephas, who they drafted last year late? Tyrell Williams. I guess they picked up Tyrell Williams this offseason, and that's their wide receiver 1. They have Rashad Perryman. They got Rashad Perryman and Quintez Cephas, and after that, Geronimo Allison. They got no one to throw the ball to. Tyrell, it's like the Jets situation. Jamison Crowder, a great wide receiver. Tyrell Williams, a pretty decent wide receiver. But if he's your number 1, you have a problem. So take a wide receiver, go there. I got him going with Jamar Chase, which brings us now, guys. Actually, before we get to our final pick number 8, we do have a super chat that I want to get to from Michael Johnston. Now, this is a good one. We got a hypothetical situation, guys. My absolute favorite. Would y'all give up number 25? So this is from the Jags, by the way. Number 25, number 45, a 2022 first, and a third to move up. And not only are you drafting Trevor Lawrence, you're drafting Pitts. You're getting a nice tight end there. Do you guys make this trade, guys? I guess it depends on where exactly you're moving up. Obviously, it's probably a top 10 pick if you're getting Kyle Pitts. Do you give up that first round you got from the Rams, your second rounder in the 40 or number 45, which also they do have another second rounder, I believe, 45. I don't know whose that is, but that's not their own. And then a 2022 first and third.
I don't want to say yes definitively, but I actually like this. Especially if you've got those picks to, I don't want to say spare because it's not like you're just wasting the picks here, but if you've got those picks to spare, that's something that I've noticed a lot recently in other sports of teams making trades that are more so in like the mid rounds, and you're thinking that doesn't make any sense, but when a team has picks to spare, why not dish those picks off and see what you can get in return? And I've seen that in hockey recently quite a bit. So I don't know. I like this actually. So sure, why not? And you know what? If Pitts is your guy, kind of like Lyle said, so it's not as hit or miss as it can be with a quarterback. But if Pitts is your guy, then go get Pitts. But if you're trading into a certain spot where you think it could be either Pitts or it could be Waddle or it could be Chase, I say do it, because those are 3 guys that I think if you pair with a guy like Trevor Lawrence, you're probably going to be okay either way. But if Pitts is your guy, try to get Pitts.
I guess it just depends on if you think those other picks can all amount to the production that Pitts would put up. Because, okay, just take this year, for example. You have 25 and 45. Let's hypothetically say they get Trevor Lawrence 2 receivers to help him out. So let's say it's Rashad Bateman and Terrace Marshall. Are Rashad Bateman and Terrace Marshall combined with Trevor Lawrence going to put up more production than Kyle Pitts and Trevor Lawrence? That's what the Jags are going to have to decide for themselves. That would certainly be a scary combo. I wouldn't hate it. I just wonder if they can stack up more with all these picks they've accumulated over time.
I mean, I just want to say before Brady goes really quickly, I feel like, let's say it's the number 8 or 9 pick they're doing. I feel like 25 and 45, that right there could potentially be enough just to seal the deal without even having to throw in a first and a third for the next year. Maybe if you throw in like the third for next year. But again, if you're moving from 9 to 25 and you get a fairly high second round pick, I think that could be enough to potentially just get the deal done just for those two. But I'll let Brady answer.
Yeah, I think it was similar to what I said about the last pick with Detroit. There is such a deep weapon class, receiver class, with guys like I said, Elijah Moore, Rashad Bateman. You get to Rondale Moore, you get to Kadarius Toney, you get all these guys who are, you can't only draft receivers in the first round. So some of these guys are going to fall to the second round. And if the Jaguars have the 33rd pick, you can get a guy who is one of those few who will still be around, almost guaranteed to be around on the start of day 2. So, I think it's a good trade. I just don't see them doing it to get Pitts when there are other great weapons who, they aren't as good, but the Jags have a good core of weapons already.
Yeah, I was going to add that Brady just mentioned. I mean, they still technically have DJ Chark, who was like a Baltimore Raven for a few hours, according to some people, which when DJ Chark is healthy and he's good to go, he's a really good wide receiver. It's definitely an upgrade with Trevor Lawrence compared to Gardner Minshew. They did sign Marvin Jones this offseason, who's a really good number 2. And then they have Laviska Shenault, who can literally do it all. So if you're the Jags, you don't even necessarily need to draft a wide receiver, especially early on. Maybe like in the mid rounds, if there's a guy who you think is a good value, get him there. But yeah, they don't need to spend up high to get a wide receiver. But if they were to get Kyle Pitts, that would be quite the room for Trevor Lawrence, because then you got Kyle Pitts, DJ Chark, Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault. That's quite the good combo there. So overall, I think they can trade up, but I don't necessarily think they will. But the Jags, they're in a good situation because they got a lot of high picks. All right, guys, our final pick of the night, pick number 8.
Really quickly, one last thing. This is Urban Meyer's first draft. I don't think he's going to be that risky. He's going to try to just pretty much go.
He's not John Gruden.
He's not John Gruden. That's for sure. So I think Urban Meyer plays it pretty safe in his first NFL draft. Hi, Josh.
I think so too.
Okay. So at number 8 for the Panthers, there's no need for a quarterback considering they just made this move for Sam Darnold yesterday or the day before. They could go wide receiver if they really want to. If Chase and Jalen Waddle are available. For me, of course, like I said, they're not. So I think their best option here is to improve the secondary. They've got so many different needs on defense, and I think it starts in the secondary. And my top defensive back off the board is Patrick Surtain. So I'm going to go back-to-back picks from Bama with Waddle at 7, and I think they take Patrick Surtain at 8, going to Carolina.
Well, we've talked about Kyle Pitts too much tonight for me to not have him in my top 8. So here we go. Pick number 8, Kyle Pitts goes to the Carolina Panthers. And this has been a topic of Sam Darnold's ever since he got to the Jets, is who is he throwing to? Who are his weapons? His weapons have gotten better now since he's going to be going to Carolina with DJ Moore and with Robbie Anderson. So he has some guys, but Carolina's still
McCaffrey.
Well, of course, but I mean, that's a given, but I'm talking about his receivers. But 100% Christian McCaffrey's another. That's another 1,000-yard guy as a pass catcher, as long as he's healthy. So you add all those guys up. And then you throw in Pitts. There's no excuse for Sam Darnold. And oh, by the way, he'd be going from an Adam Gase offense to a Joe Brady offense. So you get him all those weapons, you get him Joe Brady, you get him Kyle Pitts. Here's his chance to shine. I think this pick, if Pitts is sitting there at 8, makes way too much sense. So I have Pitts to the Panthers.
Side note real quick, you brought up Robbie Anderson. Remember, they were pretty good together before everything happened with Robbie Anderson, and then he left the Jets. But remember, like, they were pretty good together early on.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he was good there.
I think, Lyle, you brought up the great point is, they have 2 good receivers on the roster already. They need to fill that 3rd receiver spot. And I don't know how I feel about drafting a guy so early to fill the 3rd receiver spot. I think Pitts, had I not had him going to Detroit, I think Pitts would have been a great fit personnel-wise in Carolina. However, I am going to take a receiver. I'm going to go with Jalen Waddle with Carolina. I think that just completes their offense. They do need to do some work on the offensive line as well, but I think that can come later in the draft or throughout the rest of free agency. Now knowing that Sam Darnold is the quarterback there, most likely, instead of, unless Teddy Bridgewater gets a starting quarterback job. But I think Jalen Waddle to Carolina is a good fit. I think it's going to be like you said, going to a Joe Brady offense, and it all opens up. And now, lo and behold, you have 3 great receivers. You got an elite running back in the backfield. They just need to figure out the tight end position. But I think Waddle's going to be a good fit there for them.
Yeah, sorry, I was just trying to Google. I wanted to see who the tight ends were in Carolina. We got Ian Thomas, Dan Arnold. Again, Lyle does this often. He somehow steals my notes and steals exactly what I'm going to be doing because
I really quickly, I do want to say, I think the way that Carolina's offense, like we saw this last year, it doesn't need a tight end to survive. And so it's going to be more of a spread offense, especially with what Joe Brady's doing. He doesn't utilize tight ends very often. So,
but Pitts isn't really a tight end.
Like I was going to say, Pitts is an exception. You make an exception for a player like that.
The best player available.
Yeah.
So as I was saying, Lyle copied me because I also have Kyle Pitts going to number 8 because now Sam Darnold, you give him Robbie Anderson, you give him DJ Moore, now you give him Kyle Pitts, you give him 3 incredible weapons. Guys, you know what's crazy? How, it feels like Sam Darnold has been in the NFL forever. He's currently only 9 months older than Mac Jones is. So the Panthers, you got some teams that are going to be drafting, Mac Jones with the number 3, number 4 overall pick, whereas the Panthers essentially just traded for one that's a year older and, had some pretty high draft capital. But in regards to that, I do like Kyle Pitts here just because, one, the Panthers don't have a decent tight end. 2, you're giving Sam Darnold weapons now. I know last year in the draft, the Panthers spent every draft pick they owned on a defensive player. So why not start this year by taking an offensive player? Again, maybe depending on how the draft goes, maybe somehow Jamar Chase is still sitting here at number 8 or something like that. Then maybe you pull the trigger on a guy like Jamar Chase. But Kyle Pitts, I think overall this is a no doubt easy pick to make because now all of a sudden your offense is Sam Darnold, Kyle Pitts, Christian McCaffrey, Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, and as Lyle said as well, he gets to go from the dumpster fire hellhole that was Adam Gase. And as we've seen what happens when every other player that was in his system goes somewhere else and how they succeed. Now you got a Joe Brady system. Overall, I think, again, I'm not going to say a no-brainer, but I think it would be a smart move for them. Again, it depends on how the draft is falling as well. Picks can be going somewhere else, but I like him going there. Kyle Pitts at number 8. So, guys, that wraps up our 1 through 8. For everyone that probably tuned in late or missed some certain picks, why don't we just quickly run through who we had 1 through 8 and the teams we had 1 through 8 because, Lyle and I made trades. You guys didn't, but just say who the team was and who you had them taken there before we wrap it up.
All right. So at 1, I've got Trevor Lawrence to the Jags. At 2, I've got Fields to the Jets. At 3, I've got Zach Wilson to the Niners. At 4, I've got Kyle Pitts to Atlanta. At 5, I've got Penei Sewell to Cincinnati. At 6, I've got Jamar Chase to Miami. At 7, I've got Jalen Waddle to Detroit. And at 8, I've got Patrick Surtain to Carolina. And then, like I said before, I'm not making any trades, but I'll point out when I think trades will happen. And even though I have Pitts at 4 to Atlanta, that's if there's no trade. I do think that pick gets traded. And I actually really like what Lyle said, having Denver hop up to number 4.
Yeah, so I have Lawrence at 1, Wilson at 2, Jones at 3, Broncos trade up to 4 to get Fields, Lions trade up to 5 to get Trey Lance, Jamar Chase at 6 to the Dolphins, Penei Sewell at 7 to the Bengals, Kyle Pitts at 8 to the Panthers.
I kind of want to change one of my picks.
Nope, it's too late, Brady.
I was going to change at 8. Oh, well.
To who?
Just read who you have now, then you could do it next week.
I will. No. Well, that's a pain in the ass. Whatever. I'll just keep it what it is. Trevor Lawrence, Jacksonville, number 1. Zach Wilson to the Jets at 2. Mac Jones to San Francisco at 3. Fields to Atlanta at 4. Penei Sewell to Cincy at 5. Jamar Chase, Miami at 6. Kyle Pitts, Detroit 7. Jalen Waddle 8. I wanted to change it to Slater at 8.
Yeah, you could do it next week.
I could see that.
You could do it next week. All right, guys. I got Trevor Lawrence to the 1 at Jags, or going to the Jags at 1. Zach Wilson, Jets at 2. Mac Jones going to the Niners at 3. I had the Washington football team trading up to get Justin Fields at number 4. I had the Bengals going with Penei Sewell at number 5. I had the Broncos trading up to get Trey Lance at 6. Jamar Chase going to the Lions at 7, and Kyle Pitts going to the Panthers at 8. Again, as people have said in the comments below, that the biggest need that the Panthers have, which they do need, is a tackle, which again, you can go Rashad Slater, Twitter, you can go, Darisaw, I think, out of Virginia Tech, I want to say, who's a really good prospect. So they could go there. This is just, we want to see a lot of offense going on in Carolina. All right, guys. But now, unfortunately, because of the whole issue that took like 10, 15 minutes off from us earlier in the show, we were going to do our top 5 quarterbacks, top 5 running backs for the draft. But we do want to get to a Q&A because we do have a lot of questions on Twitter and we've had in the live chat. We're going to save the top 5 quarterback and running back prospects for next week's show. We'll just add on to the wide receivers as well. So it's not going to be as, hectic next week for 9 through 16, assuming there's no YouTube lag. So again, for those top 5s, top 5 quarterbacks, top 5 running back, and top 5 wide receiver prospects, we're going to do that for next week's show. Because again, it's already 6:20. We do want to get to at least some sort of Q&A. So if you have any questions in regards to the draft, some people earlier, they were sending us super chats in regards to like, would you do this trade? So if you have any trade suggestions, players fallen, anything like that, hit us up in the live chat. We'll be answering questions for the next 10 or 15 minutes, trying to get to as many draft questions as possible. If there's a question you want to have answered, you can donate to the super chat that guarantees your question answered. It pops up in a nice shiny color, and we'll go more in depth on your questions. So guys, as we always do, again, if you want to have your question answered, you can donate to the super chat. You can also hit us up on Twitter at the HH Show _. We always post a Q&A question right before the show starts. We give top dibs over on Twitter. So guys, we're going to go over to Twitter right now, go over some of these questions. The first one comes from, actually, this is perfect timing because we were just talking about this. At Seahawks, find a number 1 corner, please. That's who the name is. Lyle, if you could take any cornerback in the draft, who would it be going to the Seahawks first off?
Like in the
like you guys
early?
are picking, you guys are picking a number 7 somehow. Who do you want to be? Who, if you could pick the number 1 cornerback, who would it be to the Seahawks?
Oh, corner. I thought you said QB. That's why I was confused.
Sorry,
okay,
cornerback. Yeah.
Oh, it'd be Surtain. I'd love to have Surtain.
Hey, maybe he can smoke some weed and have a photo posted of him. Maybe he can slide to you guys in the second round, and you guys can have him there. Anyway, though, they want to know, is Kyle Pitts to Carolina more inevitable with the Sam Darnold trade? Which is funny. We just talked about that. Guys, I'll just say yes or no more likely just due to the Sam Darnold trade. Have they just kept Teddy Bridgewater?
Wait, if they hadn't traded for Sam Darnold,
if they hadn't traded for Sam Darnold, do you think they would have? Do you think the Sam Darnold trade gives them a higher chance of drafting a guy like Kyle Pitts to give them more weapons? Just yes or no, so we can get to more questions.
No. I think they go either defense or offensive line.
I won't say it's inevitable, but I like the idea of Pitts pairing up in Carolina with Darnold.
Ask it one more time. I'm so lost. I got
it's essentially, do you think the Darnold move made it more likely that they're going to draft Kyle Pitts than had they just stuck with Bridgewater?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think it made it a ton more likely, but I think the percentage definitely went up. Our man MC Metz wants to know which quarterback in this class can be a bust. So I guess, guys, who do you think has the biggest chance to be the Bo Callahan of this draft?
I don't think it's Mac Jones. I don't want to say that because I think he's a good quarterback. And again, like I've said this all year and I try to cover my own tail too. I said very early on, I thought he was going to have a really good season and that Bryce Young would not take over the quarterback role at Alabama. So I think Mac Jones is a very good quarterback. I think he's a top 15 pick in the NFL draft. He's just not my top QB off the board. If I'm going to take one to be a bust, I think I'm going to take Trey Lance, and I think it's just because we know the least about him. Yes, he's good. Yes, he's agile. He's got great maneuverability. He's great throwing the ball outside the pocket. Like all these things, yes, he's very good, but we've seen him significantly less often than we've seen all these other guys. I mean, like even going into the season, I think that the fact that BYU played essentially a full schedule in this COVID season was magnificent for Zach Wilson because he was not only good, but BYU was like primetime every week. So it seemed like everybody was watching him and we just didn't get to see Trey Lance at all. So that's why I'm going to say Trey Lance. I don't know if I actually believe that, but I think he's got the highest probability of maybe not being a bust, but not being as successful as the others in this draft.
It's too bad because I like all 5 of these quarterbacks, and I'd like to believe all 5 of them are going to be good, but the likelihood of that is pretty small. If Mac Jones goes to San Francisco, I agree with you, Josh. I don't think Kyle Shanahan would turn his quarterback into a bust. I don't know if he's going to be the best quarterback ever, but you look at the guys Shanahan's groomed between Ryan, between Cousins, those guys certainly aren't busts. Jimmy Garoppolo was not his guy, just for clarification. I mean, he came from New England. Mm-hmm. I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to say it's Trey Lance, if anybody, just because he's the most unknown. But, you know, I think Trey Lance has a chance to be good. So if I have to pick, I'll go Lance.
I don't want to triple up, but I'm going to. I'm also going to say Trey Lance. And that is because of the unknown factor. You know, Carson Wentz came out of the same school, but we saw him play. We saw him compete. Trey Lance, we saw one game, and that was the very beginning of this year. And the end of last year, he looked good. But as a quarterback, I think that's the one position you couldn't take off for this last year if you still wanted to be a higher draft pick. And so I think it's going to be Trey Lance that could be considered the biggest bust. I don't know if he will be, but I think he could be the one that I would go for.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to kind of really put it on Trey Lance if he's the fifth quarterback taken. I mean, if you're the fifth quarterback taken and you don't really meet expectations, it's just the fact that he might be the fifth overall pick, whereas, you know, in a lot of drafts, the fifth overall quarterback, they potentially be in the second round. I think Zach Wilson's the easy one here because, one, the Jets just traded Sam Darnold, who I still think has a chance to be – so I mean, we're going to see what he looks like with weapons for the first time in his career. So, one, you're trading Sam Darnold. Two, I mean, Trevor Lawrence – again, if something happens with Trevor Lawrence, that's on the Jags, but he's the guarantee. He's the one you pick. So essentially, this is kind of like the Jets having the number one overall pick with your slew of quarterbacks aside from Trevor Lawrence. And if they go with Zach Wilson, if they choose him again, if Mac Jones ends up being better, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, other quarterbacks down the line, if they end up being better, then it's technically you got the number one overall pick wrong because, again, that's what it kind of is. And again, now mentioning you're trading away a guy who I think is still a decent quarterback. Just give him weapons, get him the hell away from Adam Gase, and things might happen. So I think Zach Wilson has a chance to potentially be the biggest bust. Again, this is a question that won't be able to be answered for at least 10, 15 years or something like that. Guys, our final question over on Twitter comes from Almost Always Football Blog /Juan Soto for MVP. What position do each of you want your respective favorite teams to draft? So I'm assuming this is just in the first round. What do we want our team to do in the first round? And guys, you could pretend you guys have a first round pick because I know not all of us have that luxury this year. So let's all pretend our team has a first rounder this year.
Assuming my team has a first rounder, I'm a Rams fan. When was the last time we had a first round pick? When's the next time we have a first round pick? That's another good question. But anyway, I don't know. I think that ultimately they're obviously fine on quarterbacks. I think they're starting to deter from needing a running back, especially since they got rid of Gurley and kind of ran by committee the last 2 years. And then wide receivers, I think they're all right. So I'm going to go defense. I would go either outside of offensive lineman. I think the Rams could always use one of those. I would go defense, maybe a linebacker or something. Obviously, when you've got Aaron Donald on the defensive line, I don't think you're desperate for another edge rusher or anything like that. But I would go maybe somebody on defense. I don't know what their biggest draft need is. In the past, I've always said it was offensive linemen. But they were a little bit better this past year. So I don't know. Either offensive line or somewhere on defense.
Yeah, Josh and I are the same here because we don't have first-round picks. If the Seahawks had a first-round pick, it would be at 23 because they traded with the Jets for Jamal Adams, and if they had that pick, they'd be the 23rd pick. The two areas they need are a number 3 receiver and a center. And if they're picking in this draft, this receiver class is so loaded that you can get a third receiver later on. Obviously, there's been Russell Wilson news all offseason. Today, I mean, if it wasn't put to rest already, in Carlos Dunlap's press conference, who's a defensive end who just resigned with the Seahawks, he said he texted Russell saying, "Are you going to be here? Because I need to know before I resign." And he said, "Yes, I'm here. I'm here to stay." So that's been put to rest. Having said that, it'd still be nice to get him some more offensive line help. They got him Gabe Jackson from the Raiders, but it'd be nice to get him a center. And there's a couple good centers in this draft between Landon Dickerson, Creed Humphrey, even that D3 kid who lit it up at the Senior Bowl, Quinn Miners. So if I had a first-round pick, I'd love to get Dickerson. But even for the second-round pick at 56, I'm hoping one of those 3 guys can slide there and the Seahawks can take them.
My team does have a first-round pick. We're at 21 for now. I think the biggest needs and once for me is a new left tackle. Anthony Costanzo just retired after about 12 years. I think was one of the most underappreciated, undervalued left tackles in the league. He was the left tackle for Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck, Jacoby Brissett. We don't really count that. Dan Orlovsky. We don't really count that. Phillip Rivers. So, 3 pretty good quarterbacks, and he was a left tackle through all those regimes. So I think we need a left tackle or an edge rusher are the 2 biggest needs for the Colts.
Yeah, this one's easy for me. I wanted them to do it last year, but the Saints need a wide receiver, and they need one bad because, as we saw, when Michael Thomas goes down, it is just there's nothing. I mean, there's nothing. Emmanuel Sanders, he's gone, so now they got Traquan Smith, who still hasn't taken the next step I thought he would have. Marquez Callaway and little Jordan Humphreys still there. So
you got that quarterback, receiver, running back, tight end, kick returner, kicker guy.
That is true. That is true. So whoever's throwing the ball next year, whether it's Jameis, Taysom, I don't really care. Give him someone else to throw to other than Michael Thomas. That way, when Michael Thomas punches his teammate and has 3 different injuries, there's someone to throw the ball to that's not Traquan Smith and little Jordan Humphrey. So Terrace Marshall would be fantastic. Have him stay from LSU, go to NOLA, or Rashad Bateman, maybe Rondale Moore. Literally, whoever the best available wide receiver is, hopefully they take him. Guys, we have a super chat that comes in from Bucko Beasy. What is more likely, Rashad Bateman or Terrace Marshall to the Ravens? Funny, I literally just mentioned both those names potentially going to the Saints. The Ravens, they've been making some nice moves this offseason. Bateman or Marshall, who do you think would be the better pick there?
Okay, so the Ravens are picking at 27. And given where I have my mock draft right now, I have Waddle and I have Chase already off the board in the top 8. So that leaves the wide receivers that are still going to be there that I still have to get through would be Devontae Smith, Rashad Bateman, Terrence Marshall. So I'm gonna say that it's Marshall. I think that if you're taking a receiver at 27, I think the most likely at this point would be Marshall. If I'm the Ravens, I'm hoping for Rashad Bateman, and I think there's a really good chance that he's still there. I was looking up Rashad Bateman stuff today, and a lot of the little clips, like scouts or analysts or whatever, they'll tweet the little close-up videos of them at their pro day or whatever, and they'll just pick one aspect of their game. And one thing that a lot of people seem to be raving about with Bateman is how quick he gets off the line and gets downfield. Other than the fact that he's got a great size and a good frame too. So I like Bateman at this pick. I think Marshall's realistic, but if I'm the Ravens, I'm hoping it's Bateman.
I'm hoping it's Bateman too if it's the Ravens, but the more likely scenario here is Marshall. I personally think Bateman will be gone by pick 27.
I think it's a toss-up for me. This is so difficult because it is 27. It's that weird end of first. It's not the end of the first round, but it's not the middle of the first round. So you really don't know who's gonna be there. So a few years ago we thought, hey, DK Metcalf should be gone by now, and he's still there. Well, does something come out with one of these guys that makes him fall like DK did, and all of a sudden? So I'm not really sure. I think if Bateman's there, I think Bateman's the better option, but I don't think Bateman will be there at 27.
Yeah. Again, it just depends on how the draft falls, guys. We have time for one more question. I saw this, but I want to ask you guys. NFL Podcast is saying, why is everyone sleeping on Kyle Trask? Well, I just think Kyle Trask isn't worthy of being a first-round pick. But how early do you guys think – I'm going to propose a new question. How early do you think Kyle Trask can potentially go? Do you think he can slide into that first round, or do you think he's going to be a second-round pick?
I don't think he slides into the first round, and I think if you can get him in the second or third round even, I think he's a great pick, which is why I think that there are some of these teams that have a starting quarterback right now, but maybe you're thinking, okay, when are you going to take the backup? Like the Packers last year, taking Jordan Love that early. I don't know. I think that's a pick, not even just Jordan Love. I just think that that's a pick where you can take a quarterback later and still get a decent option to be your backup quarterback, that you can have a guy like Aaron Rodgers groom. Because what happened this year? Aaron Rodgers had one of the best years of his career. The best year of his career. So it's look, I don't know. I don't think Matt Ryan's similar right there, but again, I think the Falcons are in a similar situation. So maybe you can get Trask later on. I think if you're the Falcons and you can get Trask in the second round, I think it's a great pick.
I'd just like to say on Jordan Love, I've still watched his highlight tape a few times over the last year since he's been drafted. I still want to see him out there and see him play. It might not end up being for the Packers, but I still think he has a chance to be good. I mean, there's a reason I liked him so much during draft season last year. That being said, to Josh's point, talking about the Packers, I have not seen a worse 1 and 2 pick in the first and second round than what the Packers did last year. For a team that's a Super Bowl contender, that was an atrocious first and second round pick on their end, taking a quarterback who has no foreseeable future to the starting job, and then a running back with a day 3 grade in the second round. And then you repaid Aaron Jones. So nice job, Packers. Anyway, Kyle Trask, that's the question. I think the only way he slips into the first round is if a team circles back and trades up to the end of the first round. For example, if New England misses out on all 5 quarterbacks, they take somebody on defense or a receiver with their first round pick at 15 and then decide, you know what, we really like Trask and we think he has a chance to develop with us and potentially be our guy. Maybe they trade back in at the end of the first round to go get him. But that's the only way. Otherwise, I think Trask will go somewhere early to mid-second.
I think Kyle Trask, I think he's a very good quarterback, but I also think he looked better this last year than he actually is because of the weapons he had. I'm not trying to knock Kyle Trask at all. I just think the weapons around him made him look so much better. I think he's going to be the first. How do I put this? He's going to be the first quarterback taken as a backup. There will be a guy. So Jordan Love last year, like you said, was he taken to be a backup? Yes. Were the guys in front of him taken to be a backup? No. I think Kyle Trask will be the first quarterback taken to start the year as the backup quarterback. And I think that's a second. I see there's no way he goes into the first round, especially if it is so top heavy with 5 to even 6 quarterbacks taken in the top 10, 11, 12 picks. I see no way Kyle Trask jumps up into the first round, especially because if a team needs a quarterback, they're going to try to trade up. They're not going to settle at this point. So I think Trask is a second, third round guy. It just by the way the draft works out.
It will be interesting because I think Kyle Trask is that quarterback that's going to set the second wave, because there are the 5 who I think they're in their own tier. I think Kyle Trask is the only one that's in the tier 2, because I think all the other quarterbacks after him, like Kellen Mond with David Mills from Stanford, I don't think they're on his level. So it's a matter of at what point does he go? Then is a quarterback run going to happen? I wouldn't be shocked if Trask goes at 27, 28, 29. Like you guys said, the Patriots come in, they trade up. So one of these teams trades up, like Brady says, they're trading to get their backup and maybe have him develop or something like that. He's not going to be drafted as a starter unless the other 5 quarterbacks just decide not to play football anymore. So Kyle Trask, again, I wouldn't be shocked if he goes the late second, early third. It's just a matter of where teams value him, where they want to take a backup quarterback. Guys, that does wrap up this edition of the Harris Highlights Show. Again, next week, we're going to be doing picks 9 through 16, our top 5 quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs. Thanks to everyone that stuck around when we had that 10, 15-minute YouTube blip when we just stopped and there was a problem with the lag or something like that. So again, next week, picks 9 through 16, maybe there's going to be more NFL draft trades. It's going to make this a little more interesting. But again, for those picks, for our top 5 quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs, stay tuned for that next week. Again, we're doing this every week leading up to the NFL draft, doing mock drafts. And then on draft night, we're going to be going live, giving our reactions for the NFL draft, taking a few shots when our teams trade up, trade down, make some awful picks. And it's going to be a whole lot of fun, guys. Any parting words before we head out for the week?
No.
I'm tired.
Hey, Lyle, my Mariners bet's looking pretty good.
Yeah, they're 2-2. It's an okay start.
Hey, I just need them to have a better winning percentage than 46 or 47%. So if they're 500, I'll keep that pace.
Lyle, on the White Sox broadcast last night, in the first inning, they said, "Oh, so here's Kyle Seager, and certain front office executives think he's not going to be on the Mariners next year, but don't believe everything you hear at a Rotary Club."
Yeah.
In the first inning.
Did Benetti say that?
Yeah.
We're just going to end it on that note. So again, make sure to follow the show on Twitter at the @HH_ for more college football news. Instagram at Harris Highlights Show. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts. You can find us there. Just search Harris Highlights Show. Again, next week, more mock drafts, player rankings, a whole bunch of fun stuff For Josh Schaefer, Lyle Goldstein, Brady Klein, this has been Blake Harris from the Chateau in beautiful Monrovia, California. And we're going to see you guys right back here again next Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern for some more NFL Draft.